It was 1945, 2 years before Kenneth Arnold skipping saucers in the sky started the modern concept of UFOs. 2 years before another saucer slammed into the desert near Roswell. Not far from that epic event, two boys said they had witnessed an alien craft slam into the sand within throwing distance of the Trinity site where Oppenheimer and company had only weeks before ushered in the nuclear era. They saw bodies, they even stole an artifact, but the government kept them silent for over half a century. This is the story of the Trinity UFO crash.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Weird World Podcast. I'm Carrie.
I'm Dean.
Hey, Dean.
Hi, Carrie.
UFOs, huh? What's skipping stars? Is that what you said?
I said skipping saucers. That's actually the phrase that Kenneth Arnold used back in 1947 in Washington when he saw what is now considered the first modern sighting of UFOs would give rise to the phrase flying saucers. He said something like saucers skipping across the sky or something like that is what he said. That's how, and that became flying saucers in the media very soon thereafter, and that became the word for UFOs until it was UFOs, and now it's UAPs. It's the evolution. So this is what has become a kind of a cause celeb in the UFO world. It's become a very prominent UFO case, not least because it actually predates Roswell by 2 years. Roswell's kind of, that's become the quintessential UFO story.
It is the big one.
It took place in 1947. This event occurred in August of 1945. So the Academy Award-winning movie Oppenheimer, that tells the story of America's desperate, frantic effort to build a nuclear bomb before the Germans did to end World War II. Mm-hmm. On July 16th, 1945, at 5:29 in the morning, basically at dawn. It's mountain time, by the way. This is in New Mexico, of course. The plutonium bomb that the Oppenheimer and company called the Gadget, it turned the darkness into blinding light, and the world was instantly a much more dangerous place. That test site was codenamed Trinity.
Oh, okay.
And that was chosen by lead scientist J. Robert Oppenheimer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there some biblical religious reason for this?
Yes, I'll get in that a little bit.
Okay.
There is kind of, but his reasons for that were stated some years later.
So who knows?
I haven't seen the movie. I'm embarrassed and ashamed to say, but he's often portrayed.
It's not very shameful.
I haven't seen that or Barbie, so
that is shameful.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, so I haven't seen either part of Barbenheimer. That's embarrassing.
Although I have a feeling you might not have the same.
Yeah, you keep on saying that about Barbie, like I'm some kind of misogynist son of a bitch.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
You won't get it.
No, I think you'll get it. I don't think it's going to make you emotional. I don't think you'll cry.
I'll probably just sob over
during America Ferrera's big speech.
Yeah, well, maybe during Oppenheimer's, probably not. But he is often portrayed as this person who rued the day and things like that. Maybe not so much. Anyway, about 425 people watched that day from a relatively safe distance. It was in the Jornada del Muerto desert. Go ahead and tell me what that means, Cara.
Horn of Death.
The Horn of Death. Are you just making up the horn part?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I like that quick acknowledgement that you're just pulling shit out of your ass. That's good. I'm impressed by that. It actually means Journey of the Dead Man, or at least that's how Google AI is translating it for me, or Dead Man's Route. Really kind of route. Okay, so that's a desert in New Mexico, kind of right there in the middle of central New Mexico. It's about 35 miles southeast of Socorro. Very sparsely inhabited kind of place for obvious reasons. I actually looked at 12 different places to have what they knew they were going to have to test the nuclear bomb before they used it. And they looked at a lot of different places, including one or two in California, by the way.
Right.
But they settled on New Mexico. Desert. Like that. The winds were very predictable, things like that. So
could have done it in Death Valley.
Yeah, that's good. Good, Carrie.
What?
Tell him. Don't give me any ideas. So this thing they call the Gadget was essentially a bomb. It unleashed 25 kilotons of dynamite, the equivalent of 25 kilotons of dynamite. It turned the silica sand around this kind of wide and shallow center into a slightly radioactive green glass.
Yeah.
It burnt it into glass and it had this greenish tinge to it. Scientists would call it Trinitite. The name for it is a brand new thing. They had to give it a name.
Yeah.
And the locals in the area would collect it for years.
I was going to say it's probably a hot commodity.
It was. I don't know.
Yeah.
If they probably used it for jewelry they sold on Etsy in 1945. Maybe not. So I don't know. Hey, check it.
Would it be dangerous?
It was a little bit radioactive. So it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe you shouldn't sell it on Etsy as a necklace.
Trinitite?
Trinitite. Yeah. Carrie's looking it up right now.
I'm going to look it up.
Buy a bracelet.
Well, because, green
Everybody
is my
cancer.
color.
Yeah, you do. You are a big fan. Okay. A 100-foot observation tower nearby was absolutely vaporized. Back at base camp, the observers, all the 400-plus people that were watching, they felt a thankfully pretty brief heat that was like an oven. It just sort of washed quickly over them. But they heard an absolutely deafening roar, and they felt a shockwave blast through them. About 40 seconds after the detonation, locals felt that shockwave up to 100 miles away, and they saw the mushroom cloud from many, many miles away because it blossomed up into the sky 7.5 miles.
Wow.
Miles up in the air, so way up into the stratosphere, I think, maybe, probably.
Trinitite break?
Yes?
It's not pretty.
It's not now.
It's not even green.
It's not green?
It's like a gray rock.
Huh.
Maybe this is all fake Trinitite.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a glass-like, and it was green.
But it's all on just it's all the ones that I see for sale. They're all in
sale.
little display boxes and.
Yeah, you're getting scammed, or somebody
No,
is,
I'm not getting scammed.
Well, don't get scammed. I wonder if that's really Trinity. I mean, it's not going to be like a 7-Up bottle, but it should be glass-like at least. Anyway,
I mean, it does have a gray tinge, but no, they look like rocks.
I see a picture here that actually does look like glass.
I mean, these ones come with certificates of authenticity, Dean.
Oh, that's impossible to forge.
And it's from Jensen Scientifics LLC.
So I didn't realize this from Jensen's. I mean,
Yeah.
you buy Jensen's, you're buying quality.
This one says green, red, black, and metal, $265 for a little over half a gram.
Are we doing a Trinitite weird bit right now? I'm not sure we're going to upload that separately. Okay. So anyway, back to our story, Carrie. The thing that most observers would say that they would absolutely never forget and that was seared into their minds and their eyes was the light. It was it's insane. It was just like it was on you. It was just suddenly there was no light and suddenly it was light, just a flash. Again, it was noiseless at first. It's just suddenly your world is the brightest light imaginable. Instantly and immediately. No time at all went by. It was far, far brighter than any of them even expected. And it lingered much longer than they thought it would. It flashed darkness into light brighter than the sun. It etched the surrounding mountains. Remember, it was dark. They were doing it right about dawn. And all of a sudden, you can just see every speck of the surrounding mountains when that light came on. It was just this instant blinding white light. The scientists, the military, and the political observers were stunned. It was a little more than they expected. Oppenheimer would later, of course, famously say he thought of a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. When Vishnu is trying to impress a prince, Vishnu shows him his menacing, multi-armed side of him. It's like, this is what my real appearance. And said to that prince, now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Oppenheimer didn't say that.
Yeah.
He said, at the time I thought of that. But he's saying at the time I thought of that years later. So did you, Bob?
Yeah.
Did you?
Well, who knows?
I'm pretty sure no is the word. I'm very skeptical about those things years after the fact. It's like, no, I thought of this great quote. I didn't say it. It'd be like Neil Armstrong saying, I was so close to saying this is one small step for mankind, one big, and I just didn't say it. My bad. But at the time, though, one observer remembered that Oppenheimer just kind of like strutting around. Like, I nailed it, bitches. It was a military observer too, by the way. He said, quote, I'll never forget his walk. I'll never forget the way he stepped out of the car. He walked like it was high noon, this kind of strut. He had done it.
I thought that he wasn't happy about it.
Always has been portrayed that way. And I think years later he was. At the time, he was not like that.
Huh.
Not by multiple observers.
Yeah.
That wasn't the only person who said that's how he was kind of reacting. And remember, years later he'd say, I thought of this really sad quote. And it indicates that I felt really bad about what I've done. But I don't think he
But
did.
also, like, he knew he was creating a weapon of mass destruction. Did he think it would never be used to kill people?
I don't know that I think they probably hoped. Remember, there was a lot of talk, we'll just do a demonstration and everybody will say, okay, I don't want that. There was hopes for Japan. There was a plan to show, like, we'll put this on an island. We'll bring your people here. We'll show you what it can do. The problem was they didn't have enough plutonium to make that realistic. They thought, well, that could be like the last one. And what if they don't fall for it? Remember, we only had 2 and the second one was smaller.
Yeah.
It took, I'm going by memory here, but I thought it took a year or 2 to build another one. It took some time anyway, a time which, if the U.S. had invaded Japan, thousands and thousands of American soldiers would have died. So there was the sense that maybe it won't have to be used. And they knew full well. I think the power of it probably did exceed their expectations as well, I think a little bit. So the locals naturally knew, okay, something just happened. There's this huge bang, this incredible light. They had no word of it. People knew there were there's some kind of operation over there, but no one knew what they were doing, of course.
Right.
When the bomb was exploded, they felt the shock. They heard the boom. There was a family called the Padillas. They had a little ranch about 18 miles northwest of the Trinity site.
I was going to ask you, how far away was this?
Was what?
Were the people who could feel
miles
it?
away.
Yeah.
Much more than that. I'm just picking I'm picking up one family for what you'll see is a very good reason now, the Padillas.
But how far away were the closest people? Do you think?
Less than that.
Yeah.
No one that I know of died.
Yeah.
There would be, there's no question people died of cancer. And years after would be health problems in the area. But our story now shifts to the Padillas, who lived 18 miles away in a little ranch house on a little ranch that Father Faustino, I shouldn't say he's not a priest, he's the head of the family, Faustino Padilla. He had a leased land ranch, he leased from the federal government, and he ran it really mainly with his small son, because I guess like the older males in the family, they were all fighting the war. They're mostly drafted. It's just the end of World War II now. We're in the operations was in July. Now the European part of the war had recently ended, but the Japanese part of the war, the Pacific Theater was still occurring. So that test I mentioned, the Trinity test, was July 16th. At this time, again, you had people still overseas. And so 9-year-old Jose Padilla helped run the ranch with his dad. He would even, he says, drive their truck around at the age of 9. He was often joined in his chores by his 7-year-old best friend, Remigio Baca. We'll call him Remy.
A 7-year-old.
7-year-old was his buddy.
Okay.
And they would go do chores together on the ranch, like, find stray cows, which is actually critical in our story. So Remy, it's R-E-M-E is how it's spelled in pretty much everywhere. I don't know if that's, would you pronounce that Remy or Remy?
Oh, I don't know.
Of course, I could just easily have looked that up, but that would be, okay, I'm going to call him Remy. I hope you're okay with that.
Remy.
No, you monster. So, 9-year-old Jose, 7-year-old Remy, Jose Padilla and Remy Baca, they are our primary characters in the story we're going to tell.
Okay.
So they're out doing their chores a lot, working the ranch. Remy's father, by the way, he'd been a tenant farmer in the area, but at this point, his father worked for the Veterans Hospital up in Albuquerque, which is a fair drive away. So that's the story. So that he would go over and hang out with his buddy Jose and help around the ranch there when his dad at work. Mm-hmm. The boom and the flash from the Trinity.
Were there mothers in this?
You never hear about them. If there were mothers,
so it's like a Disney movie.
It was exactly like a Disney movie. It's like single fathers. I swear. No, I take that back. I take it back. There was the Padilla mom, because actually her name was Inez. She doesn't really enter in the story, but she supposedly, apparently was looking toward the Trinity site when it occurred because she was blinded.
Oh.
At least how Jose would tell the story is that his mother was blinded by the nuclear test at Trinity.
Wow.
She just happened to be looking in the wrong, like, what is going on? Boom.
Did she get compensated?
I don't know. Did it actually happen? I mean, who's looking? Just hadn't been looking in that direction. And it was surrounded by, the site was surrounded by at least some hills. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But the story is she was blinded. So that's the last we hear of Inez.
Okay.
Just FYI. So maybe because she was bedridden.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. Blind people often can't get out of bed.
Blind people, it does actually affect your legs. It's a little known fact. So little Jose Padilla and little Remy Baca are doing their stuff, doing their normal stuff on August 6th. What happened on August 6th of that year, just about 3 weeks after the Trinity test? That was when little boy was sent crashing down to explode above Hiroshima. And at that point now, the locals would find out, oh, so that's what that light and boom was back on July 16th. And the Trinity operation, the Trinity test was no longer secret. Everybody found out at the same time that it was to build a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
So the story, what I'm going to do is tell you the story, the account as it is now told.
Okay.
Okay. And that's probably going to be the bulk of part one here. We'll talk about some problems, quote unquote, with that story after that and where it sits now. But I want to tell you first let's call it the final version of the story. And I'm using that advisedly because that sense of that plays a really big part in assessing the validity of this story. Okay. So it's 10 days after Hiroshima. It's August 16th, 1945 now. So this will be about a month after the test. Jose and Reme, they were out on horseback searching the Padilla Ranch for a lost cow. I told you that's the kind of thing they would do. I was pretty upfront about that. At least that is the leading version of this story. I'm going to try to stick to a story. In this case, though, you do hear that there's a few things they may have been doing out there, but the story they kind of settled on is that, we were out looking for a lost cow. In fact, that lost cow, we had to find her soon because that cow was very, very pregnant. She's going to give birth. We wanted to be there for her just to help out. You know? I mean, help her breathe. The Lamaze method, I assume. So off they went. They were poking into, I guess, little canyons and valleys and meadows in search of this heavily pregnant cow on a horse. Let's say 2 horses. Let's assume they had their own horses, okay? Suddenly, the sky above them was rent by a bright light, and they heard and felt this kind of monstrous bang, this boom. The flash. So the flash of light comes by. It's got and then it's followed very quickly by just a crashing, thunderous, booming sound. And it's over kind of a ridge just ahead of them is where it seemed to disappear. And it like something hit the ground over that ridge really hard, really fast. Smoke starts billowing up almost immediately. Like, okay, something must have caught on fire then. Yeah. So naturally, the boys rushed to the scene. As they rose over that little ridge there, they looked down to, I guess, think of it like a little soft meadow or valley or something like that is the impression I get. There's not a lot of super good descriptions of the geology of it or whatever, but something like that is what it seems like. And they were baffled because they saw sort of just a massive swath of the ground cut into a groove. Just think of a giant groove scraping across the earth of this little meadow about 100 feet wide. And looked at them like something like 2 feet deep. So
100 feet.
100 feet wide. So a gouge.
It's huge.
It is very huge. A gouge in the earth. It was lined, by the way, like there's some scrub and some bushes and stuff. And a lot of that scrub is on fire already. Yeah. And it's hot. The smoke is billowing. The cause of that destruction, they saw it right away. They knew what it was instantly. Because at the end of a debris trail with metal objects apparently, they see a metal craft of some sort shaped a lot like an avocado lying in a smoky ruin with a big hole, jagged hole on one side of this craft.
So it must have been pretty big.
It must have been. We'll hear in a minute how big it was.
Okay.
I'm not sure how 100 foot wide enters into it, but we'll see. So you think like chunks of metal are kind of smoldering on the ground around this craft, but most of the craft is intact. It's got a hole in it. They apparently brought a pair of binoculars because they're looking from the ridge top or just down below through the binoculars, and so they can see it pretty well without having to get too close yet because it's very hot. It's very hot, so they don't go close to it right away. But they study it through the binoculars, and they decide that it looks like it's about 25 to 30 feet long and about 13 feet high. There's not a sense, it must have been less than 25 or 30 feet long if they're going to describe that as the length of it. So, but I can't find the width of it. Yeah. But so 13 feet high, 25 or 30 feet long, decent width. I don't know how much, 10 feet, 12 feet. I don't know. It was gray. They looked at that jagged hole along the side, and they figured, hey, you know what? There's a 50-foot high radio tower nearby. Maybe they clipped it on the way, and that's how they crashed. At least that was their apparent instant theory. Despite the heat still, burning around the craft, they did make their way down to the crash site, and they got closer. And as they approached, though, they thought, okay, the heat's just too much. Right along the periphery, the heat's just too much. We can't actually go into it or touch it or anything like that. So they get as close as they can, and they, again, now with their naked eyes, examine the wreckage. They're pretty close, but you don't get a sense, are they 10 feet? Are they 15 feet? I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're pretty close. Remy spotted a thin, shiny metal object folded beneath the rock, kind of like it got crumpled, like maybe the rock got, knocked out from the soil or something like that, and it fell on this piece of metal. It was, again, like a thin, shiny, kind of metallic looking thing to him, right? Mm-hmm. And he would say later that it looked, quote, kind of like the tin foil in the old olive green Philip Morris cigarette packs. So, like, how cigarettes had that thin foil, something like that. So he leans over, Remy, and he pulls the object from beneath the rock. He says, quote, it instantly, quote, unfolded itself. I refolded it and it spread itself out again, unquote. So Remy stuffed this strange material in his pocket.
How big was it?
Small enough to go in his pocket, I guess. I get the sense, especially if he's comparing it to cigarette tinfoil, probably
small,
not that big.
A few inches. Yeah.
But it's doing this very magical thing that if you're a fan of the lore of UFOs, as I am, it would come back in the. Well, can you tell me? Do you know what that was very famous? Something just like that was associated with something very famous, Roswell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, supposedly that Jesse Marcel, the Air Force officer, would describe something like that, like this thin metal that he crumbled and it uncrumbled itself. So that happened to Remy. Remy would say, hey, 2 years before that, I had the same thing. I put it in my pocket. By the way, we never hear about that again.
Yeah.
So, but you'll see there is an artifact that still exists to this day that came from this test site. We'll get to that later. So they move a little closer. The heat starts to subside. And they tried to go as close as they can to that hole and look inside. So they get pretty close. Again, we're not sure how close, but they're not touching it.
Yeah.
And they're not going inside, but they are able to look inside through that hole. They just, like Remy would say, I was scared. I was nervous. Jose was much braver than I was. Remy said, quote, I had my hand over my face, peeking through fingers, end quote. He said that Jose was braver, and but then when they heard a noise coming from inside the craft, they both just like froze.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if they pissed themselves, but they may have. Curiosity, though, as you know, is a very powerful thing. So the boys both inch a little bit closer, and now they can see inside the craft. And what do you think they saw inside this craft, Carrie?
A little gray man.
3 little gray men, quote unquote. 3 of them, 3
beings.
Creatures. They describe these creatures as decidedly humanoid, but not human. They all appeared to them to be alive because they were writhing in place and moving. And I think it was Remy again, would describe them as moving very weirdly. It seemed that they were unable to extricate themselves, obviously.
Yeah.
And one of the creatures made a sound. And it shocked them because Remy would describe it as like an animal crying out, or he'd even describe it almost like the cry of a newborn baby. Yeah. So apparently in distress, probably injured from the crash. Mm-hmm. Amazing they're still alive. That's some good crash technology by these aliens, presumably, even for them to live. But they weren't babies. They were something like, they were smaller than adult humans. Maybe they estimated they might be something like 5 feet tall.
Okay.
So, which is pretty typical. And they had these big old heads and giant eyes and long, thin arms, right? The heads were kind of pear-shaped, and they had little holes for their apparent noses and a little hole for their apparent mouths. And again, Jose would later explicitly say, we thought of them as humanoid, as human-like, but weirdly, and right so far, they sound a lot like Greys,
right?
The sort of dominant alien. But Jose would say that they resembled also a praying mantis, or maybe something like a Jerusalem cricket. So, which is a big, thick cricket. So think with those kind of, I presume their arms must have been bent at that cricket-like, mantis-like angle, and they must have had some kind of insectivorish flavor to them. Flavor? So I don't know. I mean, were they the hybrid love children of the Greys? And maybe the creatures from Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers? Kind of sounds like it. So he always describes them as humanoid. And I think if I thought of them as a praying mantis, I would not describe them as humanoid, but they do. So unsurprisingly, since they had just crash landed on an alien planet, Remy said the creatures, quote, looked under stress. I mean, you think, Remy? Quote, they moved fast as if they were able to will themselves from one position to another in an instant. They were shadowy and expressionless, but definitely living beings, unquote. Again, that seems, is a hair contradictory?
Yeah.
Because if they're unable to get out from where they are, but they can will themselves from place to place, why wouldn't they just simply will themselves?
But that's a weird thing for somebody to say about another being.
That is, yeah.
I mean,
it is shadowy and expressionless.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you can see, they just have that flat, straight, horizontal little mouth, little nose, but they're making noises and writhing, which indicates that they're under stress. I'm not sure how we saw them moving like that, though.
That is
from that description, I can't really picture it.
And a child didn't come up with that either.
Well, as we'll see, this story was not told as children.
No,
at least not anywhere
I'm assuming it
publicly.
didn't. Yeah.
So the boys said they didn't feel in fear of the creatures, and they felt that the creatures needed help. But Remy was like, I want to go. I'm scared.
Yeah.
Let's get out. I'm 7. For God's sake, you're 9, Jose. Yeah. You're almost an adult, but I'm 7.
You handle this.
Yeah, no, this is on you. So the situation had really unnerved him, and he would later say, it was also getting dark. We got to go. And that's fair. You don't want to be out in the wilderness like that at the dark. It'd be harder to find your way home.
Yeah.
They apparently did. They brought binoculars, apparently not flashlights or anything like that. So they return home. They go back to the Padilla Ranch house. And they, of course, excitedly tell their story to Faustino, their dad, possibly also Inez, but she's blind, so she can't hear it. Mm-hmm. And Jose, I think that's how it works. I don't understand blindness very well. So Jose said, quote, they were running back and forth, looking desperate. He's talking about he and Remy. Mm-hmm. So Jose would say, quote, about the aliens, they were running back and forth, looking desperate. They were like children. They didn't have hair, unquote. Again, that seems a little bit contradictory from their initial one. Maybe they interpreted this weird movement. Maybe it was shaking or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But running back and forth, because it seems like they were just in the ship.
Yeah.
So it's not clear.
Maybe they were running in the ship.
Maybe they were, because it's not clear. It's never said like, oh, they were strapped in seats or something like that.
Right.
It's not clear what they were on. In fact, we'll see later, there was no actually, quote, furniture in the ship at all.
Yeah.
So presumably they were just lying on the floor of the ship. But then they must have gotten up and been, quote, running back and forth and looking desperate. Faustino, I presumably kind of nodded like, kids, whatever. Finally, he said, we'll check it out in a day or two, quote unquote.
Wow.
Well, I mean, this is an alien spacecraft that has crash landed not too far from your house on your ranch.
Yeah.
If you've got time, we'll check it out. Yeah, we'll give it a day.
Might you not think, oh, maybe it was just a small airplane and there could be real humans in there?
In some sources, they say that, yes, he thought maybe it's like some military craft, in which case, really, you seem unconcerned, Faustino, about rendering help to this crash
Yes,
victims. Yeah, I thought of that too. That seems this response is extremely unusual. Yeah. But I mean,
maybe Jose often runs home telling tall tales, and I mean,
maybe
knows?
You know what? Maybe maybe he's just saying that to just like pat them on the head. But he would say, Faustino, according to Jose, Faustino would say, quote, it must be something the military lost, and we shouldn't disturb it. Leave your horse here, Remy, and Jose and I will drive you home since it's so late. That's the level of detail they were talking about this. Okay. So the next day, remember this, the next day after they found 3 living aliens in a crashed extraterrestrial spaceship, both of the boys said they didn't go back out there because they were too busy with chores. They had a lot to do. Yeah. There was the cows to milk. They had to birth that cow, right? A lot to do. So they didn't have time to go out there let's call it day 2. The next day, day 3 of this adventure, Jose and Remy led Jose's father, Faustino, and he had called in a state police officer who's a friend of the family's named Eddie Apodaca.
Okay.
He said, okay, if this is something out there, come with me. You're a cop.
Yeah.
So they drove as far as they go. They took both Padilla's old beat-up pickup truck, presumably with 9-year-old Jose driving, and Apodaca's squad car. They drove as far as they can go on a road. The road ends because it's wild country now, and they hiked out the rest of the way with the boys leading them on to the crash site.
Yeah.
They do the same thing. This is a ridge before you get to the crash site, so they rise over that ridge. And so they go over the ridge, and they move down into the valley. They see the whole gouge, the whole groove along the spacecraft and the metal debris and all that. And the two adults, they tell the kids to stay some ways back. We're not sure. I think not too far away, but don't come any closer. We'll go check out this spacecraft. They're probably tingling with excitement.
Yeah.
And so the elder Padilla and Apodaca go in there, and they actually go and climb into the spacecraft.
Oh.
In through the hole. The hole's plenty big. Remember, the boys could see through it.
Yeah.
So the hole's a big, huge gouge in the side of the craft. And the boys would later say that they thought the two men remained in there about 5 or 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And when they came out, both of those adults seemed pretty shaken. From inside the craft, one of the men said, "I can't see their hombrecitos," which means the little men.
Yeah.
Because those little men had vanished. They see a spacecraft. They're inside a spacecraft.
Yeah.
That's probably why they're shaken. But there's no hombrecitos.
Huh.
They are gone.
Maybe they got picked up.
They must have, yeah. They got picked up, or the army had come by, the military, the government, something like that had come by and cleaned some stuff up. Why they didn't clean everything up, we don't know, but somehow there's no more bodies
take everything.
There. The two men, though, had seen plenty. This is huge. They told the boys right away, quote, "Don't tell anybody about this. Not your brother, not your cousin, not your mother, not your father. That's our business." This was, end quote. They thought this is some kind of government thing. This is way bigger than us. It's best if we don't tell anyone.
Okay.
There is, however, a slightly different version of this that was told years later by Jose and Remy, as when they first related it to a reporter. Later on, we'll get to that in a bit. In this telling, I like this much better, because in this telling, the two boys and the two men get up on the ridge there, and they look down, and they see the gouge, they see the groove, but they see no debris and no ship at all. So Jose and Remy are like, "What? No way. It was here. I swear to God." They're upset. Jose says, "Somebody must have taken it." And possibly just to humor the boys, the two men go, "Oh, you know what? We'll go down there and take a closer look." But obviously there's nothing there. So they start walking down the ridge. And as they get a little lower into that little, I don't know, valley or canyon or whatever it is, one of them said, quote, "As if by magic," unquote, "the ship suddenly reappeared as the group neared the crash site."
So it's cloaked.
Remy would later say that, quote, here's what from the top of the hill, it blended into the surroundings. The sun was at a different angle, and the object had dirt and debris over it, end quote. And he speculated that, that it may have been put there by someone after the crash, like some kind of, somehow to mask it.
Yeah.
That's what he thought. Mm-hmm. That was his explanation.
Makes sense.
I mean, does it though?
Yeah, because when they got picked up by another ship, they said, put the cloaking dirt on it. We got to hide it as best we can.
Okay, got
and
it.
then, or whatever, maybe it has some sort of camouflage technology. And,
go ahead.
And we'll come back for it.
That's what I think. I think it had a flat-out cloaking device. Have they not seen Star Trek? I think, however...
But then they wouldn't have seen it when they got closer.
Well, maybe it was on the fritz. Maybe it was not working, and they turned it on after the kids had left. Mm-hmm. And now it was on, but it was working inconsistently. That's my theory. Is probably, again, no sense it's damaging the craft.
Well, I was going to say, I think, it was very damaged. That's why it was... Only when you're far away you can't see it,
Maybe.
But when you get up close.
Okay, well, or they do have cloaking technology. It's just shit cloaking technology.
Nah.
That's my theory too. That's my third theory. The debris, though, was gone in this version. So had it been cleaned up? Who had cleaned it up? Had the government already found the site? So we don't know. Maybe this is why Faustino and Apodaca were so intent in telling the boys to keep their mouths shut. It's like, oh, they've been here already. They're cleaning stuff up. Let's not mess with this. I don't know. The group returned home, But later that same day, the two boys snuck out and they trekked all the way back to the crash site again. Maybe they took their horses. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe, again, Jose could drive the truck. Rising it back over the ridge again, the boys froze. They hunkered down low because below in that debris field and that groove, and yes, the debris is back now,
Yeah.
was a bunch of soldiers collecting debris and material. U.S. Army soldiers.
Okay.
So they lost them a little while, and they got the hell out of there without being seen. The next day, this is day 4, April 19th, in the story, it's a Sunday, a man named Sergeant R. Avila, 1L, only one initial as well. Don't know what his first name was. I'm going to say Ray, but it's not. Sergeant Avila was from the U.S. Army, and he came visiting the Padilla Ranch House.
Oh.
State Patrolman Apodaca was with him. It's never said, like, did Apodaca call him? We don't know. That's not. I mean, Apodaca and his dad were saying, we're not going to tell anybody about this, but so we don't know. But whatever it was.
Well, maybe the military contacted the local police and said, hey, did you get any reports of anything unusual?
And they had not.
What
They hadn't
Apodaca
told
did.
anybody.
But
Maybe.
Apodaca,
Maybe
Apodaca just happened to be the one that answered the phone.
Maybe. As a matter of fact, I did. But I just said I'm not going to tell anybody, but I'll tell you. So anyway, Sergeant Avila came over there, and he had kind of hat in hand. He said, I need to ask a favor, guys. Could the military enter the ranch and cut into his cattle fence, pretty please? Because he said, quote, as you may know, there's a weather balloon down on your property.
Oh.
We need to install a metal gate and grade a road to the site to recover it. We'll have to tear down a part of the fence adjoining the cattle guard, unquote. It would also necessitate, by the way, bringing in some really heavy equipment, and which had to clear the path for some big trucks that were coming in, needed to move the
Weather balloon.
So that's the story that Sergeant Avila was telling them. Even at ages 9 and 7, the boys are like, what?
Yeah.
Remy would later say, quote, but this isn't like the weather balloons we've seen before. They were little, almost like a kite. I think he said at the time. In which case, Sergeant Avila just backhanded him. No, he didn't. Sergeant Avila probably smiled, probably rubbed his little head.
Yeah.
And he told the boys, you know what? Don't talk about this. It's government business. And no one should go near the scene because we have to get our weather balloon. You guys understand, right?
Yeah.
So,
because the military is very concerned
yeah,
about weather balloons.
but not concerned about inventing a story that made any sense.
Yeah.
So we need, a huge truck, gates, heavy machinery
Yes.
for a
Weather balloon.
which would weigh like a pound. Or
Yeah.
two. So
But it's always a weather balloon.
it always is weather
Yeah.
balloons. Yeah. Also is something that has been associated with the Roswell
Yeah.
incident as well.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is an accident. On the 5th day, the military brought in these big graders and earth movers and big trucks. They built a road. Remember, they literally built a temporary road. They built their big metal gate. It's never explained why they need a gate.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I get, you see at the end of the road, to the rest of the way, you need to build a road to go get it. But do you? I feel like you can use a mule and hike that out of there. But anyway, for whatever reason, they had to... Well, because we know the real reason, don't we? They're going to need a big trucks and a big road because they're going to actually be taking out a giant spaceship from there. So we know that. Why Sergeant Avila would even try to say that when if he had reports about it, he knew that all 4 people there had seen it, I don't know. I guess he's just like, wink, wink, you know what's going on here. Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
I think that's what the sense I get anyway. So there's a huge truck, moves in, and it's towing a massive trailer behind it. It was, something to carry those heavy loads like weather balloons. We know this because, we know all this, by the way, because naturally, Jose and Remy did not go back to the scene. They snuck back to the scene every single day. And for the next several days it took for all this stuff to happen, they would usually duck behind vegetation, but they saw everything. And I guess apparently they even add, and I think this is from their book, after a hard day's work, all these crewmen, they would head over to a place called the Owl Bar and Cafe in the nearby town of San Antonio. It's the closest town to them.
Yeah.
To, have some beers and work off steam as they're doing something crazy, top secret, just a few miles away.
How did Steven Spielberg not make a movie out of this? A heartwarming movie with 2 cute little kids.
That's a great, let's write that screenplay.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. All right, let's do that.
We
By the
see
end
where
of these
it goes,
2 episodes, you're probably not going to want to see that movie
Okay.
anymore. So finally, the military wrestled the spaceship onto the tractor trailer, and they covered it up with a big tarp.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, this apparently took several days to do this. I'm not completely sure why, but the ship was apparently intact because the boys would describe it. They saw it on this trailer and with the tarp over. They saw the whole thing happen, so they got it onto the back as intact as it was when they first saw it. And Jose and Remy then waited for the soldiers they drove the truck just outside this new gate, and then they apparently parked that truck. And the boys knew exactly what they needed to do. They needed to go get a souvenir.
Oh.
Something. I don't think they're thinking like proof. At the time, they're little kids. They're thinking, just a souvenir from this adventure.
Right.
According to their retelling, they waited for the soldiers to leave the truck, and they did.
That doesn't make any sense.
Apparently, leaving the craft completely unguarded was something that soldiers did back in 1945. Maybe to go for one last night at the Allen Bar Cafe. Carrie, Allen Bar Cafe. That's what I'm thinking. I realize at this point there's a lot of apparentlys in this accounting, but there are a lot of points in the story where it's not completely clear what happened or why that happened. So yeah, the first thing you think is...
But also the kids would have no idea why or what they were doing.
But we as human beings, as rational adults would say, why would they leave unguarded this insanely valuable, super hyper top secret spacecraft? Pre-Roswell, remember?
Yeah.
It would have been our first spacecraft, presumably. Okay. Yeah. So this is a big deal. Apparently not. I mean, I hear they had a lager on tap at the Al Bar Cafe. That was delish. You couldn't get anywhere else.
So. Yeah, they had snipers in the hills and they were waiting to see if the aliens came back.
Had not thought of that.
To recover their craft.
If they did, they didn't care about what the kids did. Because the kids then promptly snuck under the tarpaulin. And Remy would say that, again, I was scared. Again, I was 7. So I just held the tarp up, and Jose got under the tarp, and he went inside through that big jagged hole into the spacecraft. He's a brave little 9-year-old.
Jose's got balls.
Huevos, Carrie. That's what they call them. So Jose finally got his inside look inside the craft. Remember, they were too afraid to go actually inside before. So he's inside there. And he said that it seemed to be built by some kind of strange yellowy or kind of brass colored metal, but it didn't shine like you expect metal to do. So I don't know, maybe it was matte. Maybe it was a matte alien.
Like brushed nickel.
Okay, maybe it's like that. The walls were curved, and he said they appeared to be built from panels. But there's no fasteners, no rivets or something like that you would think would be holding together these panels, especially curved panels. The floor was flat. There were no other kind of chairs or, he used the word furniture, nothing else in there. But, I mean, so just think, curved walls, flat floor, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
No like helm or something, no chairs, no nothing. It did, however, have what sounds like a big-ass skylight. Because on the top, he looked up, and there's a big transparent dome about 2 or so feet, I want to say wide, I guess. It's not clear if he's talking about diameter or width, but let's say it's a decent-sized glass dome, not unlike a skylight. And unfortunately, that skylight let in the sun, because otherwise I'm not sure how Jose has all these details. He doesn't have any flashlight. So thankfully, fortunately, there's a skylight on this spacecraft.
Yeah.
There was a panel also on the wall, about 2 by 2.5 feet. It was flat on one of those curved walls. And he set some pins in it. And he saw a, quote, metal piece roughly a foot long, like attached to it with pins, attaching this metal piece to this panel.
Okay.
It's hard to picture. We'll see a picture on the social media. I'll talk more about this metal piece in part 2. But he says, okay, obviously I've got my souvenir. So Jose grabs the crowbar he had apparently brought with him instead of a flashlight, and he pried the metal piece loose from the panel.
Okay.
He would then hold on to that keepsake for decades after decades after decades. And that's kind of it. The kids went home with their souvenir, but they kept the story to themselves. They did as they're told, and they told no one for decades. The government did the same, and they stuck, I guess, to their concocted weather balloon retrieval story, and no one was the wiser. That is until the world of UFO phenomena got a hold of this story many years later. So that's what the story said. I'm going to end here part 1 with telling how the story became widely known. And then again, in part 2, we're going to take a hard look at the story and all the reasons to argue for it or against it, and where it stands today. So the story sat there, or really, actually, you can sense, in a sense, remained hidden for nearly 60 years when Jose and Remy, who had long drifted apart, they didn't really had any contact. They just met by chance again, I believe back in New Mexico, and they decided they should tell their story. This is like the early 2000s now. The two approached an old friend from high school. His name is Ben Moffitt, and he was still living in New Mexico. He was a journalist. He wrote for a little newspaper in Socorro called the Mountain Mail. So they find Ben, and they say, we've got a story to you. We want you to publish it. We're ready to come forward and be public about this. The account related just now that I've just told you is not necessarily from that initial account written as a 2-part story by Moffitt that he published on October 30th and November 6th, 2003. It was also not quite the same story they started to tell a few friends back in the mid-1990s, or at least Remy did. It was also not the same story as they told a UFO researcher named Thomas Carey in 2002 and 3, who they approached before they had approached Moffitt. Deep breath. It was not even the account the two men would write in their own self-published book in 2011. It was molded and shaped and appeared finally as a more cohesive whole with, by the way, the critical addition of a new, quote, witness who was key to the story we'll talk about again in part 2. That didn't happen until 2021 in a book written by UFO researchers Paola Harris and Jacques Vallée. So there's all these iterations. We'll get into that, trust me, in some detail. Not right now, though. Remy would the first thing you ask is like, why have you been silent so long? And Ben Moffitt, to his credit, did ask that. And Remy would say that he had noticed over the years that anyone who started to remember too much about the point zero event, quote unquote point zero, which I believe he's referring to the Trinity test site, he would say that he had noticed that when people start talking about that, they would be sent by the government for a, quote, long and restful cure, unquote, in an insane asylum. That's what he'd tell some people. He at some point he's quoted as saying that. I think it might come. I said Ben Moffitt. I take that back. It was from, I believe, their 2011 self-published book that the two wrote. Moffitt, however, did ask separately, why have you guys waited so long to come public about this story? And the two now old men would say that it was something that they can never get out of their heads. Now, you'll notice that's not actually an answer to the question.
Yeah.
So
that's why are you coming forward now?
Yeah.
Not
it is weird.
Why did you wait so long?
Yeah, exactly. The Mountain Mail hardly had a global reach, though.
Yeah.
As you might imagine. It's a Socorro newspaper. So the story just didn't create very much buzz.
Yeah.
Maybe in Socorro, like, I remember those guys.
Yeah.
They were kids. Okay. Didn't Jose drive a truck when he was 9? So it appeared then later in 2006 in a book called Need to Know, which is written by a British UFO conspiracy theorist named Timothy Good. A little mention there, didn't create much of a buzz. It began kind of a slow sizzle, though, into the UFO lore prominence only about 2009 when an Italian UFO researcher named Paola Harris, I know she sounds American, but she's Italian. She must be married to an English guy or American guy. She heard about it in 2009. She probably read it in Good's book. I don't know. Harris got in touch with the two men. And naturally, in 2010, the next year, what do you think she did? She wants to tell this UFO story. Where do you go in America to tell that story? Especially in 2010, you go on Coast to Coast AM radio show, my favorite radio show, where it's everyone's favorite font of utterly credulous, uncritical UFO story slop, where you can go say whatever you want and it's going, oh my God, yes, everything you say is true. Thank you for sharing that with us. You're courageous. This show has millions of listeners. And this led to Jose and Remy to write a book and self-publish it in 2011. It was called Born on the Edge of Ground Zero. The Ground Zero referring to Trinity.
Sure, yeah.
Still, despite the coast-to-coast exposure, this book just elicited a yawn. No one really heard about it. No one paid attention to it. I'm frankly surprised by that because in the UFO world,
it's a new story, yeah,
and get on every single conference and have a panel And so I'm frankly surprised though.
Yeah.
But then when UFOs kind of really blew up again in 2017, remember the New York Times published that story. They published an article that was very favorable to UFO believers, and in 2017, and then shortly thereafter. Remember the Go Fast video? We talked about it. Those two videos from the Air Force and the Navy.
The Tic Tac.
The Tic Tac and the Go Fast videos, which I believe are the most intriguing evidence for UFOs still in existence right now. So those also were released in 2017. So all of a sudden UFOs really kind of blew up again.
Yeah.
UFOs have always been big and they kind of waxes and wanes. But after those videos came out, we've seen UFO research be taken much, much more seriously. And which I think it should. And so Jacques Vallée, who I mentioned ago, he was maybe the most legendary, famous UFO researcher ever. Certainly in the 60s and 70s and 80s. He's now well into his 80s. So by 2017, he's seeing UFO. I'm a UFO researcher. UFOs are big. I mean, I don't want to ascribe too much knowledge of his motivation, but it looks like he's looking for a case. I need a case, a big case. I can write about it, publish a book about it. So he went kind of searching for a great case to write about. Again, he was nearing his 80s by this point. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but do you remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
I do remember that movie.
You know that there's that French kind of like scientist or whatever who plays the music and everything? That's supposedly loosely based on Jacques Vallée.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Yo, you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
No.
Wow. That's shameful, Carrie. That's almost worse than me not seeing Barbenheimer.
It's not shameful to have not seen
shameful.
a movie.
In this case, it is.
You weirdo.
I believe it is. So Vallée was aware of Harris's work with Trinity. Remember, she had taken on Coast to Coast. And so he contacts her. And apparently he was impressed with Harris because he said, I want to work together. He may have been impressed because she describes herself as an expert on, quote, exopolitics.
Sure.
That is the politics of alien civilizations as gleaned from the messages extraterrestrials have told through abductees and contactees here on Earth.
Did she make up her area of expertise?
I'm sure she did.
Okay.
She even teaches a course on this through a group that calls itself the Exopolitics Institute. She may have founded the Exopolitics. I don't know.
Thank God. I thought you were going to say at the University of Florence or something like that.
Wait for it. Okay. That will happen. Exopolitics, just as a little aside, it seems like it's a combination of things. So part of it is like examining the politics on Earth, from extraterrestrial and UFO research and things like that, cover-ups and conspiracies and that kind of thing. But it apparently explores like some of his proponents say that it secret treaties we have with aliens and alien influence on wars and stuff like that. So exopolitics in the sense that aliens impact on politics.
Sure.
So have you not seen Men in Black, Carrie?
No.
Well, yes. How have you not seen these movies? What is happening? I'm glad I've not seen Barbie now.
Maybe this is not my genre.
God damn you.
You think?
So in Men in Black, I've seen all of them, including the one with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, which I believe was underrated. I thought it was actually a very funny movie.
Is that a Men in Black movie?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't seen that one either.
So it is in that world, we do have this treaty, and we all know all the aliens. We just keep it secret, and when people find about it, you flash this little red light, and they forget everything. It's quite simple. So this is what they're studying in exopolitics. This is what Paolo Harris is studying, and this is apparently what impressed Jacques Vallée, because he decided he wanted to research it with her and write a book with her. So they did co-write a book, and it's called Trinity, the Best Kept Secret. And inexplicably, Trinity is spelled with all caps. I don't know why. I think maybe it's like, is it to convey like like Project Trinity, like it's a secret project, which it is not. It hasn't been secret since, I don't know, 3 weeks after the Trinity test site when Hiroshima happened. And or maybe they think it's an acronym. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not positive.
It's a long acronym.
It, by the way, was self-published, which is frankly a little surprising to me, in 2021. And then they did kind of a revised edition and reissued it in the next year after that. So this is about when UFO research was beginning to become politicized, as you know, as we've talked about here on the show. Conspiracy theories in general have become increasingly kind of politicized also, and they've become heavily associated with conservative American politics, and the right wing and MAGA types have really, really bought it. So most of like the congressional hearings that we've had about UFOs have been done by Republican House members.
Yeah.
It's big on Fox News, ONN. OAN? What's the news thing that's the cable channel is even more right wing than Fox. Is it OAN?
I don't know.
I can't remember that thing. I think it's OAN. They have become like a halftime UFO stuff.
It's probably OAN. It's probably One America or something like that.
I think it is. So it's become very popular in kind of the right wing world, and which it's bad for conservative politics and it's bad for UFO research.
Yeah,
it should not become politicized in the slightest, but it has been. And one of those is Fox News has done a lot of it. And Tucker Carlson would cover this story. He started covering the story in 2000, sometime after the book was published by Harris and Valet. The British Daily Mail is a tabloid. They also got wind of the story and they published a bunch of articles. The New York Times even did a very friendly article with this story as well. And of course, and it's been suddenly started popping up on lots and lots of conspiracy podcasts and UFO themed podcasts. So it's really the coverage here, especially on Fox, was seen by a Wisconsin Republican congressman named Mike Gallagher. And Mike Gallagher had held hearings to provide this very friendly environment for UFO proponents. Uh-huh. And he kind of paid homage to the Trinity incident in a very specific way. And this has been reported, and it's really kind of weird. I don't think he's quite owned up to it, but it's clear what he did. So Congress passed a spending bill that appropriated funds to the Department of Defense, and it ordered the DoD to review all classified and unclassified documents having anything to do with UFOs, and kind of to create this timeline of UFOs, the evidence for UFOs. Again, Gallagher is very much a proponent, or at least he claims to be, because it's good for his a lot of his far right wing constituents love the UFO conspiracy. Right. So he was the main person behind this little clause popped into this huge DoD spending bill, right? 1947, the year 1947, as we noted from the Kenneth Arnold thing, is commonly kind of noted as the inception of the modern UFO world in the United States. Remember, that was when Kenneth Arnold first saw those flying, skipping saucers in Washington, and almost immediately started having all kinds of flying saucer stories from all over the country. It really is the beginning of it. Of course, in hindsight, Roswell also happened in 1947, just a few weeks after Kenneth Arnold's sighting. So Gallagher, however, said not 1947 to present. He said, no, we're going to start with all materials 1945 to the present. And it's sort of an open secret that he did that to include the Trinity incident in this timeline. So presumably the DoD is now conducting that kind of research, and I'm not aware of any kind of report they have on that. I guess I should probably check that, but I don't think they have released any kind of report on that timeline. But again, they're supposed to look at unclassified and classified materials. So what this means is that the Trinity event is now, without question, a thing. Yeah, it is in the UFO lore and has evolved into one of the primary cases that's kind of trotted out as very strong evidence that aliens have indeed visited planet Earth. It's not as big as prominent as Roswell, but in the UFO world, it's a pretty big deal, and it's thought of as a really good case. That's the end of part one. In part two, we'll talk about exactly that. How good of a case is it for aliens having visited our planet Earth?
Okay,
that'll be part two. Hope you enjoyed that, Carrie. Are you on bated breath waiting for part two of the episode?
I don't know if you can be on bated breath.
I don't know how to use that phrase, apparently.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
There we go. That's better. I like that.
I'm not sure what bated breath is.
No one knows. It's not with an I, so it's not like fish bait. I do know that. No. That's all I know.
You could be on tenterhooks. Is that what that thing is?
Or is it tender hooks?
Yeah, I think it's
Is it no one knows
pronounced tenterhooks, but it's really tenterhooks or tinterhooks.
Or maybe it's a Mandela effect. And
I'm not looking this one up because I don't really care. I'm not on either though.
Well, that's good to know. Thanks for supporting the show, Carrie.
Very
Never
patient.
seen a UFO movie in your life. Never heard. You didn't even know about Men in Black? Do you know Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith?
I do know. I've seen scenes from Men in Black. I believe it's been on our TV, and I've been in and out of the room, perhaps.
Oh my God!
I have chores to do.
I'm now never watching Barbie. All right, really? Were you 9 when you were driving a truck?
It's your loss. Your loss.
Probably so.
Well, Men in Black. I was not a child when Men in Black came out.
Whatever.
Weird.
Okay, that's the end of part one. We will see you shortly. I don't know if that
next week. We'll see you next week.
Next week. Or maybe this is after both have been uploaded and you're going to boom, you're going to binge listen to the next one now.
Sure. Then we'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right. 30 seconds.
Well, bathroom break.
Okay.
Get a snack.
Cool. Makes sense. All right.
Whatever. Put a leash on your dog so you can go take a walk while you listen. That's what I do.
Now you're just getting weird. Okay.
Thanks for listening. Say hi to your dog.